Sorry, I'm waiting for. Um, but in the meantime, while the clicker comes, I'll tell you a little bit about me. I'm originally from Romania. I went to high school, actually not very far from here in Mihai Viteazu. And then I moved to the States and started Branch actually much later. And my story is a very unlikely one. I am the person who tried to build the dog walking app. Actually, it was a Fitbit for dogs. And I went through, our pivots were actually quite crazy. We went from something very unlikely to Branch, which is a solution for mobile app developers. So how do you get from Fitbit from dogs to mobile app developers? Well, that would be my story, and I hope I will debunk some of the founder myths that I've heard when I was trying to start a company, and hopefully you won't make some of the mistakes that we made, and you'll learn from the things that we did right. So, I hope the clicker is here. It's coming. Great, thank you so much. Awesome. Okay, so let's see if this works. So Branch, so this is a little bit about me. Before Branch, my co-founders and I built Kindred, which was a photo book printing app. And Branch today, we are the company that provides linking infrastructure for today's top brands. So some of these brands include Target, Airbnb, Pinterest, Jet, which is a big shopping app in the States, BuzzFeed, Slack, Tinder, and many others. We actually have over 15,000 apps that use us today. So how did we get here? The stories that I've heard over and over again are the only way you should start a company is if you find something that you're incredibly passionate about, that you can't live without, and that needs to be the idea you go after. You shouldn't look for ideas, they should come to you. Well, that's not how we started at all. We actually met because we wanted to build a big company. The one thing Alex and Mike, two of my co-founders, and I had in common when we met in business school, we wanted to build a billion-dollar company. So we decided to kind of get together and start. And I remember at the very beginning, I remember when Alex, my co-founder, I saw him building apps. And I was in my first year of business school at Stanford, and I was thinking, wow, this guy is building apps, and I am going to parties. What am I doing with my life? So I invited him to lunch one day, and I said, hey, come have lunch with me, and let's talk about ideas. And he started walking me through, I think he had 7 different ideas. And I stuck to one of them, which was Fitbit for dogs, because I knew a lot about dogs, and I felt I could complement him. He was a hardware developer, and I used to code, so I could build a website. I was pretty design-oriented, so I could build the images and the ads and build a brand around it. So I said, okay, awesome, we can make a great team. Let's apply to this class I know about called Launchpad, and it's going to be amazing. And we're going to build Fitbit for dogs and solve problems for dog owners everywhere. So that's how we started. And I have a picture of the team, but this is not working. Okay, so I have a picture of a team that will come up. But we started by trying it out. We started going to dog parks and asking dog owners, hey, would you buy this? We started doing market research. And the initial research actually told us that we were onto something huge. The market for dogs and dog owners is huge in the United States. Almost everyone owns a pet, and they spend a lot on these pets. So we're like, wow, huge market opportunity. What we didn't really understand is most dog owners actually spend their money on food and toys, and almost nothing else on disposable income. So they spend, when their dog gets sick, they take them to the vet, they buy them food, and even the toy budget is actually very small. So actually what we thought was a huge market is actually a very small market. So then we started going to dog parks, and that's something that the design process at Stanford pushes you to do, go and talk to your customers. So we would sit, I didn't have my dog with me at the time. He was with friends, he couldn't be in the dorm, so it was just like 3 creepy people in the dog park going to people, all with their dogs, and be like, hey, can I ask you some questions? Would you buy this thing? And surprise, most people actually said no, they wouldn't buy it. And what we thought, no, just because they're saying they wouldn't buy it, that's not really true. We know that what they want, and I've seen many startup founders that I mentor and coach always say that, hey, no, I'm not gonna listen to the customers. And then we started trying to raise money and started talking to VCs. And 3 guys from Stanford, actually VCs take meetings with you. But they would say this is a terrible idea. I remember someone from Y Combinator saying there were 5 different Fitbit for Dogs apps that apply just in one session. So yeah, a lot of people try to build things for dogs. So after we ran the numbers, we were lucky enough, my co-founder Alex actually has no emotional attachment to ideas, which is the opposite of me. I have all the emotional attachment in the world. He makes jokes about me saying that I have more emotions than all the other founders combined, which is true. And we sat down and we had this come to Jesus day when we said, hey, is this actually going to be a viable business? Looking at all the numbers, looking at all the people, they say no. Looking at how little income, how little is spent by dog owners on things other than food and toys, it was actually not going to be a very big market. So we decided to pivot and come up with something new. It was the end of the first year. We had all declined our internships. I remember I had to choose between Fitbit for Dogs and being a PM over the summer at Apple, and I chose Fitbit for Dogs at the time. But now it was too late. There were no more jobs for the summer. So we decided, we're like, well, we work well together. Let's go into a room and come up with an idea, which is not how many startups are started. So we had a matrix. We locked ourselves. We started in the morning. We locked ourselves in the room. And we sat there, and we said, OK, let's think of through all the ideas that we have. And I'm going to actually go back to the idea phase. And I think we had about 5 different ideas and a huge matrix on a board with like, is this going to make money day one? Because we need this to make money day one. And is this a need that we felt? And was this going to be big? And we just kind of used all the things you learn in business school and applied it to all our ideas. And the idea that won was of an app, because everyone wants to build an app today, right? There's only 2 million in the App Store, as Vitaly just said. And it was going to be a photo book printing app. So the way the idea came around, my parents are here in Romania, and I send them photo books that I build on the web. But I took a lot of my photos actually with my phone, and I put them on Facebook and Instagram. And it's actually very hard to take photos that you take from your phone and print them and send them to others. So we thought we could make this very easy and cheap. So we created a new form, which was this really cheap photo booklet. And we built an app that automatically took pictures from your phone and Facebook and Instagram and put them in this little booklet. And we thought this was going to be amazing. We didn't think at all about how we were going to promote this app, who was going to come and use this app. We just thought about the app and the idea itself. And again, something that I see a lot with other entrepreneurs, you focus so much on the idea that you actually forget to wonder, how is anyone going to find you? How is your app going to grow? How are you going to stand out from all the apps that are in the App Store? So we thought it was going to be a rocket ship. As soon as we launch, we will build it and they will come. They didn't come, not for a while anyway. So what we didn't really know, and we didn't do any research on this, was that there are 50,000 apps every single month that get submitted to the App Store. And we are going to be just one of those 50,000. And that number keeps increasing. So if you look at where we are today, we actually are at almost 18,000 that are submitted to the App Store per week. So it's incredibly hard to stand out. Well, we had some really pretty creatives that I created a while back. I had to dig through my Facebook to find these. And the idea was, and we also, one thing that we did that not many people do, we actually created the app for both Android and iOS at the same time, because we thought that this could help virality. If I'm starting a photo book and I share this app with someone else, I don't know if they're going to be on Android or an iPhone. We wanted this to work. So we spent the summer building these 2 apps, and then launched in the fall. And what happened after was really interesting. People didn't come right away, and we didn't get anyone using it. So we started to hustle. I remember going on campus and walking and finding people and asking them to download the app and rate them. Because something that's very interesting is if you have a lot of 5-star ratings, you're more likely to be noticed by Apple and being featured. And honestly, being featured is one of the only ways you can get started. Unless you have money and you can buy ads, or you get some amazing website to write about you, or you are insanely viral like Snapchat or Instagram, there's no other way except being featured to be discovered by users. And the best way to get featured is actually to get app reviews. And it's okay if you fake it. I think I got 25 by just hustling people and they were like, no, I'll rate you later. I'm like, no, just rate me now in front of me, and I'm going to sit next to you until you rate my app. And people do it. When you put the pressure on them and they can't get away from you, they will do it. So, and it worked. So these are just some ideas. And also I would go and we went on campus to hackathons and try to get everyone to rate us and download the app. And this is me at one of those hackathons. And it happened. First of all, Apple, I couldn't find a picture, but Apple featured us in Best New Apps. And it was incredible. We started getting a lot of, and then Android kind of followed and saw that we were actually the only printing app that had an Android version. All the other ones only built for iPhone. So they featured us at Best Apps of 2013, which was crazy in my mind, considering none of us had built an app before. And this was an app that I designed without any design experience. But it happened, and I'm pretty proud of it. So anything can happen. Don't be discouraged. And it was amazing. The one thing we didn't really expect is actually that we were not ready to handle the volume. We were still in school. This was our second year in business school. And I will say that probably those were the hardest months of my life. Our backend wasn't ready. So we would receive all these photo book orders, but unfortunately, and we would get hundreds a day. But because the backend wasn't ready and because there were bugs in the app, we had to remake some of these photo books. So I remember all these nights when I would sit in my dorm room until 3 a.m. making photo books in Photoshop. I would get all the pictures and resize them. And then my co-founder, Mike, at 3 a.m., he would take all the photos that I edited and put them and run a script and put them to photo books and then send them by 5 a.m. To the printer. And then in the morning, we had to go to class at 8 a.m. And then it would start all over again. We would do it like we didn't go to class, and when we did, we would just be building photo books. I saw a lot of babies. I probably saw 2,000 babies during that time and 1,000 dogs, which is great. But it was awesome because this was a pain, and that's when we found actually our fourth co-founder, Dimitri, through our investors, who came in and rebuilt our backend, and that kind of forced us to find someone, and he's still with us today at Branch. So another interesting myth is that if you make it into TechCrunch or a tech publication, you're done, it's going to be amazing. We got zero traffic. We were in TechCrunch. We were super happy. This was our dream as entrepreneurs. I remember years before, when I worked in Philadelphia as a software developer for Siemens, I used to go in TechCrunch and read about all these startups, and I said, one day, if I make it into TechCrunch, I make it. Well, we made it into TechCrunch, and nothing really happened. We didn't get any users. We were just one of the startups. The world moved on. So don't make press your high priority, make users your priority. What ended up getting the features and the initial users was actually us focusing on getting the right experience, getting the right ratings. And another really interesting thing is if you do have bad ratings in an app store, you can actually stalk those people online and find out who they are and ask them to change their review. So we would look up the username. On Android, you have their email, which is awesome. But on iOS, you don't. So you find their username, and then you start looking their username, and you find them in gaming forums, or you figure out their LinkedIn or Twitter, and then you tweet at them, and we were like, I'm so sorry, what was the problem? And in many cases for us, it was they didn't receive the book, or there was an error with the book. So we sent them 5 different books, and then they changed from 1-star rating to 5-star rating. And I think, again, all of those helped to be featured not only once, but repeatedly by Apple. So this I'm going to talk now how we got into Branch. And this is when it all started, when I was trying to do marketing. So we raised a bunch of money, actually $50,000 from an angel investor who really believed in the team, to be honest. He shook our hand and said, I don't know if you're going to do photo books, but I think you guys work great together. So I'm going to give you some money because I do believe in your team. So it's like, okay, great, but photo books? No, photo books was not what happened. But we ended up, so we spent all that money on ads. So we went to Facebook, and we realized you could do Facebook install ads, and in addition to the features, this is actually where we got the real users. Because when Apple and Android feature you, people are just curious and not your actual target customers. So I remember running hundreds of campaigns of $5 each, comparing them to each other to figure out who our audience was. So I found out that there were two types of people that bought our books. One was moms, especially young moms who had their first child, and the other one was teenagers in long-distance relationships. And they behaved incredibly differently in the app. Moms were likely to buy 5 to 7 books of their baby, and they would send it to the whole family, while teenagers were likely to only buy 1 book, but they were very cost-conscious, and they were likely to share. So I wanted to give them very different experiences when they came into the app. And I found out that that was actually not possible. There's no way to pass data through install. So when someone comes into your app for the first time, I had no idea if they were a mom and they came from the ads I was running to moms, or they were a teenager. And to me, who I worked for a web startup before, this was incredible. How can you not know where someone is coming from in your app? And I remember Alex, our CEO, who is building the apps, was telling me that this is not possible. And I was like, no, you just don't know. So I went to Stack Overflow, and I started looking for questions. And I started noticing that actually a lot of people had the same problem. It just wasn't just our problem. And it turned out that this is actually why it's so hard to discover apps. Because apps are almost like this silo citadel, there's no way you can kind of take content from the app and make it available. So the way we find content today on the web is through search. We look for things, and we find them, and they're usually websites and pages within a website. The problem with apps is the app sits on itself, and the only way you can discover apps today are through either being promoted or through ads. So what that ends up happening is this power law that my co-founder Alex wrote this article about how mobile app developers are suffering. And he didn't mean development agencies. He meant people who are trying to launch their own app. And if you look who's on the top there, it's actually Facebook, who's #1, much, much higher than everyone else. But all the top 10 are Pinterest, Skype. In US, it's an app called Bible.com, and they've been in the top 10 for the past, I think, 7 years. They use us, and every Sunday. The first time our servers ever broke was on a Sunday after they went live. So it's kind of very unexpected. I would have not expected that. But they've been there. But the point is, the 10 apps that have been in the top 10 have been there for years, and you can't break into that. Yes, Snapchat broke into that, but they were lucky, and they're an exception to the rule. All the other 20,000 that get released every week, they don't break into that. So this is a problem. With your website, it's actually really easy to send data, attribution, context. So when you get the user to the website, you know where to take them, to what content, where they come from. Do they come from an ad? You can give them something personal. But that's not what happens with your app. So that's actually, when the app gets open for the first time, you can't pass any data, attribution, or context. So you don't know where the user is coming from. You can't take them to the right content. So that makes discoverability basically impossible. So as I mentioned before, the 2 ways you can get new users to your app is actually through the App Store or through ads. So 2 things happened. I'm not going to say that we came up with this idea and wow, it was going to be amazing and we're going to build Branch. Actually, we first realized that printing and photo books weren't going to be the way to go. We tried raising money again, and people take your meetings, and they think it's interesting, and they thought we were a good team. We applied to Y Combinator, and I remember them saying, hey, if you have another idea as a team, we'd be open to it, but printing is not going to be it. Printing is dying. The margins are really small. You're never going to be big. And it's true. We ran the numbers, and it cost us about $2 per install to acquire users. And we had very high conversion rates. So when someone opened the app to them buying, it was 10%. But that means it cost us $20 to acquire a paid user. our books were $5, and we were making $1 margin. So someone would have had to buy 20 books for us to just break even. And how about everything else? How about paying ourselves and growing the business? So it's going to be very hard. And this was also not a business that people invest in. So we would have been incredibly hard to actually raise more than the 50,000 that we raised. At the same time, we discovered, as I mentioned earlier, the problem of branch. As I was trying to build those campaigns, I was trying to build a referral program, and there was no way to know where someone was coming from, so I couldn't give them a book as a referral. I was trying to build sharing. And all of these marketing tactics that make so much sense on the web were impossible in the app. So we started calling people. We're like, well, maybe we just don't know. Maybe we're a tiny little app of 3 people, 4 at the time, who have never worked in mobile before, and maybe we don't know, but maybe there are better ways. So I remember calling a friend who worked at Zynga, and another friend who worked for a travel app, Gogobot, and asking them, hey, how do you do referrals? And actually, they didn't. Zynga grew like crazy on the web because you could do referrals on Facebook and could invite friends and get free credits. So then, when Facebook blocked them and they pivoted to mobile apps, the reason why they started declining and it didn't grow like wildfire was because they couldn't do referrals anymore in mobile apps. There was no way you could know that, I'm inviting you to Castleville, and because you come from my link, you're going to get 20 coins, and I'm going to get 20 coins, which is how it used to work on Facebook. So we were like, well, this is really interesting. We stumbled across this problem that seems obvious, and yet no one is solving it. Like, we should try solving it and building this. So that's how we started Branch. It wasn't because it was a need that we felt. It was something a pain that we had suffered through, but it wasn't some idea that came to us one day that we were passionate about. We became passionate about it because we worked so hard and we struggled so much to grow our app that when we saw other developers struggling to this, we wanted to help them. So we started Branch, and I also started a community, a mobile growth community. And we grew it all over the world. We actually have a chapter here in Romania, and we have a meetup Thursday night. And I hope you come if you're around. But that was because we knew that it was actually really hard for developers to learn from other developers. And we wanted to create a forum where people speak about app growth and how to build an app and how we can transform the ecosystem to make it easier for one app developer to launch their app and actually have a chance of being successful. So I'm going to summarize my lessons. And these are not, there are other lessons, but I feel these are the most important ones and the ones that were most surprising to me. So don't be attached to an idea. I think this is the hardest thing to do for any entrepreneur, and it was very hard for me. I was mildly depressed after we quit Pawprint, the dog thing. I was mildly depressed after we let go of Kindred. It was incredibly hard. We did look at all the numbers, and it was a joint decision. But I don't know if I was a sole entrepreneur, if I would have been able to make that decision. I think it's very hard. It's your baby. It's your life. You have to believe in an idea to give it your all. And then when you have to let it go and move on to something new, it's incredibly hard to accept that it's failing. And you hear stories like the Airbnb story. They went through 20 pitches, and no one would talk to them. I don't think that's true. If you look at where Airbnb was at the beginning of those pitches and where they were at the end, actually a lot changed. They listened to those investors, and they got their idea better, and they did pivot as well. So my advice to you would be when you hear your customers, or when you hear even people you're trying to pitch to telling you that you have a bad idea, don't get discouraged, but try to understand why and see if you can incorporate that feedback in your next iteration. Set up numbers and goals and be very realistic about results. So we actually had goals. We were going to get this many people to share the app and this many people to buy if we're going to move forward. And we didn't get those numbers, and we were really realistic with ourselves, and we said, okay, this is not working. We need to move on. Listen to others, which I just mentioned. And the last one, and this is something that I didn't really understand. That people talk about product market fit when people want your product is this magical moment, and it's very, very easy to get false positives. So with Kindred, we were in the App Store, we were featured, people were buying. We thought that this was product market fit. It's not, because people were buying, but they weren't coming back. And just because some people want your product market fit means that if you go on the street and you ask 10 people that could be your potential customers if they would buy your product, all of them said yes, all of them. They're not all going to buy your product, but they need to all say they will, because not all of them will. But when we talked to Kindred, not everyone thought it was a good idea. Same with the dog thing. But with Branch, every single app developer that we would ask said, oh, this is a great idea, I want this. And this was crazy. It did feel like magic. It was something that we've never experienced before. And that's when we knew we were onto something good. And that's when we were like, this is it. This is our last life in the game of startup, and we're going to give it our all. This is us at the very beginning in a tiny little office that after we raised our seed, and it was amazing, although there was tape all over the walls, because before we had been in classrooms and accelerators, and to have your own space as a startup, it's really incredible. And then this is kind of the timeline. It was 2 years ago, and now we've grown. We're in a lot of different apps. But just a story about how we started. It's really, really hard to get your first customer. And although we knew we were onto something, we were an SDK that's in the critical path of an app. So each app that uses us, the first thing they ask when the app opens is they send us a note and they say, hey, Branch, tell me where this user is coming from. And we're like, oh, they came from this marketing link, or they came from this user. Give them this experience. The problem with being in a critical path is if you break, their app breaks. So getting the first person to actually believe that we were a real SDK and then putting us in the critical path was really hard. So what we ended up doing, actually, Alex, there was this tiny app, it was an art app, and they wanted to build a referral program, but they didn't have a developer in-house. So Alex went to their office and sat for 2 days, and not only did he integrate Branch, but he built their whole referral program. And then they went live, and it's so much easier. It's like 3 times as easy to close your second app than to close your first one. It gets as you get bigger, it gets harder. Like closing Pinterest was actually incredibly hard. We had to go through so many rounds of security and testing, but it does actually become easier. And I still think closing Pinterest was easier than closing that first app, Van Gogh. So as we think through growth, people ask, what's been the hardest thing as you scaled your company? And it hasn't been technology. I think the hardest thing by far, and the thing I deal with the most every day, is people. That's not what I expected. But as you grow from 0 to 90, you have a lot of people around you. And the hardest thing is to scale what you had as 4 co-founders to 90. How can you make others think the same way as you do? And for us, something very important that we started early on was actually values. Oh, and this is some pictures of how we started. So this was 2 years ago. That's my dog. This was a year ago, and we were much larger. And this was earlier this year at our app site. We're pretty big, and now I think we're even bigger than this. But yes, the thing that helped us the most was our values. And I remember when it was just the 4 of us, I said it's important to have values, because as we grow and as we start making even our first hire, they need to be on the same page with us. So we sat in a room and we wrote down on this big piece of paper what we thought was important to us. And these are our values have evolved a little bit every year, but they're very, very close to the first ones. So we started with partners first, because I think at Kindred, what we learned from being a consumer-facing company is customer knows best. And if you get someone a good experience, they'll change their rating from 1-star to 5-star and tell 100 of their friends about you. So although we were now going after developers, we wanted to build a similar experience. And if you look at Branch today and how most of our customers came, they actually came from developers telling other developers, because they actually loved what we did. And this is an example of our partners first. The first piece of art that we bought for our office, and this is Dimitri, our 4th co-founder, was was from this small app, Vango, and it's still in our office. And we all voted. I think I picked 10, and I sent them around the office. And I think we were 7 people at the time in the office, and we all voted. And this one won. And we always help them. Those guys, I mean, we grew a lot. Those guys are still small. But whenever they call me and they ask for help, it doesn't matter if it's the middle of the night, I'll go and help them because they were the first app that helped us get where we are today. And other are ownership of over the company, transparency, initiative, results-driven execution, urgency, because we need to move really fast, data-driven decision. And the last one that I don't think a lot of companies do, but it's very important to us because we feel we don't want jerks in the company. And we started humble. I mean, everything that happened here was just a combination of the right team, the right circumstances, being lucky, stumbling across this idea that we didn't, we faced it and we're like, let's build something. So there's no need, like nothing that we build is just one person or us as founders. It's a team effort. So humility has been actually one of the most important values that has helped us build an amazing team that helped us scale. So that's it. I hope you learned something. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah.
Thank you.
That's it. I don't know.
We have time for one question.
Okay.
Let's see. Anyone? Raise your hands because I don't see you. Do you see anyone?
No, it's okay if you don't. No worries.
Okay, there's a question right there. Quickly.
Hi, hello.
Hi.
Excellent presentation, great story, congratulations. Since you're Romanian, could you have done the same thing here?
I don't know, to be honest. I think part of, I honestly, even when people ask me what I got from business school, I think it's meeting my co-founders. And they have very varied experiences. They came, like we really complement each other. It's possible that we would have found this here. The app ecosystem being so close, like I don't even know if we could have done this in New York. I think being in Silicon Valley helped. We are, like Vitaly said earlier, Silicon Valley, if you're building a software company, it is the place to go. I think I could have done it here. Maybe not the same idea, if that makes sense. I think having the network of all these different apps, struggling with building the app myself, helped us get the idea. And then the connections that we had there helped us get these really large apps. I think it's kind of all built on each other, or every single piece built on each other. So I'll be honest, like I honestly don't know. I don't know enough about the Romanian market. It's possible. I think we could have 100% built the technology here. I don't know if we could have had as much early traction as we did being there, where most of the apps are being built. Even now, if you look at where most of our customers are, Romania is actually a big place. I think it's like number 12. But even in US, the US is obviously number 1, but more than half our customers are in the Bay Area, which is crazy. And it's not, we do meetups everywhere, we do ads everywhere. Like there are not as many apps being built in the rest of US. So I think our location did play a part into us growing so fast, but specifically for this business. I don't think it's true with any business. Thank you.
Mada Seghete, thank you very much. As I told you,